Hey folks, Nathan here from the Star Wars Timeline Gold, Star Wars Beyond the Films, and Cloud City Casino, a Star Wars gaming podcast at StarWarsReport.com, bring you another quick look at the core set here for Star Wars Legion. I have now put all the minis together, minus a couple of parts that were in error that I'm having to get them to send to me to replace some messed up parts, but we'll get to that. My suggestion would be to use this type of super glue. This was actually recommended to me by Michael Morris from Bob Smith Industries Instacure here. Basically a nice, or I guess Instacure Plus, basically just a nice super glue with a very narrow little applicator that you can use to be very fine in where you're going to stick the glue. This was actually my first time putting any of these together. Again, these videos are more for people who are kind of newbies to wargaming, just like I am, because it's trying to get us to transition over basically from X-Wing, Armada, Imperial Assault, and things like that into something like Star Wars Legion, which is very different. So you'll notice here, first off, the bases are a different color to the models themselves, or to the minis themselves. That is because you are gluing them onto the bases. And they all come in at least two pieces, okay? So the bulk of your troopers are going to tend to be two pieces, although there are some that are more than that. So, for example, for your Rebel troopers here, the first four are sort of regular troopers. We got our bearded dude holding his rifle out. We've got our non-bearded dude, kind of a mustache-looking dude, holding his weapon up. We have our guy with the rifle where he's aiming down the sights. We have a Duros, or a Neimoidian, I guess, but probably a Duros. Those are numbers 10, 11, 12, and 13 when it comes to product numbers for Legion. All of them are two pieces each. You've got the body, and then you've got to connect the arms with a plug that goes into either side, basically around where the shoulder is. Then we got 14, 15, and 16, which are sort of our higher level troopers. We have 14, which is this cool guy here, right? Got his nice different hat on. He's carrying his macro binoculars. He's got his weapon out to the side and everything. Not counting the base, this was 4 pieces, because the bottom of his body with his legs has to be glued on to the rest of his body. Then you glue on both of the arms. Number 15, our Ion Trooper. That was the trooper unit leader, by the way. This is our Ion Trooper. Pretty cool looking. In his case, we glue on the arms, and for some damn reason, we have to actually glue on the head. Yes, there's a prong in its place. And then this guy, our Z6 Trooper, kind of Gatling gun kind of looking guy, pretty sweet, nice little backpack and everything. We attach his arms, and we have to attach the backpack. And you'll notice here that we have 2 sets of these, right? 7 and 7. That is because each one of these is a quote-unquote unit, or there for you to put together a unit and use the various upgrade cards and whatnot with it. So you put them together, then you stick them on the bases. Very meticulous process. I just got all of the stuff put together here for the core set and for all of the first wave of expansions, and it basically took me for those 6 expansions in the core set from about 11 o'clock on the day that I started until about 3:30. It is a long process to put all this together, especially if you are new to this type of thing, as I am. All right, also on the Rebel side, we have number 1, which is Luke Skywalker. Yes, we have to put his arms on and then stick him on the base. Number 2, Darth Vader. Very cool. We have to put his arm on over here. Then we put his head and his cape and everything onto the body. Okay, so he comes in 3 pieces. Then we have our Stormtroopers, all of which we have the body, we have to put the arms on, which come as one piece, like the arms holding the blaster, and then you plug them in, basically. So we have Stormtrooper product number 3, 4, so one kind of running and holding it to the side, one stepping forward with both feet flat, pointing forward. We have a guy here, this is product number 5. He's got 1 foot forward, 1 foot kind of up on the balls of his feet, and then he's pointing kind of off there to the left. We have another guy here, flat-footed, who's pointing off to the side there as well. That is number 6. What I ran into was that they didn't send me enough arms for part number 4. I had 2 bodies for number 4, but rather than sending 2 sets of arms for number 4, they sent me 1 set of arms for number 4 and 3 for number 5. So I wound up attaching those number 5 arms to give me yet another pose here for this number 4. Eventually, I'll probably swap that back out if they'll send me a replacement part. Their website for replacement parts, as of the moment I'm recording this, has crashed. It is down, probably because of all the issues with the core sets from Legion. That is seeming to be something fairly widespread. All right, then we have Stormtrooper Unit Leader, the HH-12 Stormtrooper, and the DLT-19 Stormtrooper, which make up number 7, 8, and 9. That's these 3 here. So here's our leader. Okay, he comes in 2 parts. That arm has to be attached. Okay, our HH-12, very cool looking pose here. We have to attach the arms that are holding the weapon, and we have to attach this leg onto a stump. And then DLT-19, we attach the arms with the weapon, stick them on the base, very cool looking there. Now, I say that all about, how many pieces are there, how do you put it together. I say that to kind of warn people that's what you're going to expect to run into, but understand that part of it is because they want you to be able to paint these things. And in some cases, without these being in pieces, it's going to be really difficult to paint certain parts of the figures. For instance, a figure like this, to be able to really paint his torso, you kind of need those arms out of the way. They didn't do anything quite like that for Imperial Assault. They have done that for Legion. And yes, the feet are flat-footed. You put the glue directly on the flat feet and put them down on the flat surface of your stands, of your bases. You're not going to have prongs or something to stick them into. Now, probably the most complex and pain in the butt to put together of all of the stuff, including the ATST, actually, are our 74Z speeder bikes. And you'll notice here that one of my 74Zs doesn't have an arm. They sent me 2 of this arm, none of that arm, so I'm waiting for that piece to come. That I actually put in before the site crashed. These are a little more complex. You've got your trooper himself. You're attaching an arm that is holding a control rod that has to connect to the base. You have to put both of the little fins, or whatever you want to call them, onto the front. Thankfully, they're cut at exactly the right angle to look right. You have to put this little piece here on. It looks kind of like a flashlight. You have to put the little blaster on the bottom. Once you've sat your guy on, you have to put the little piece on that goes from his feet to the back. You have to put the little back bumper on, and you have to put the little pack-looking thing on, and then you stick it all on the base and stick it on a stand and stick it on the base. They're beautiful looking once it's done. I mean, these are very detailed, much more than the detail you'd see on Imperial Assault, but you are paying for that level of quality. This guy here, by the way, is a speeder bike unit leader. He apparently got his leadership position at this point because perhaps of a promotion due to his disability. Hopefully at some point he will be able to get his other arm and enter battle, being able to use both sets of controls. In his case, the other set of controls are attached to that other arm, so once it's on there, it'll have the control. The other guy, who actually I think looks the coolest, is just the regular 74Z speeder bike. Comes together pretty much the same way, except you do have a separate control arm you've got to put on here. Yes, you got to deal with his other arm attaching. And for him, for some reason, again, you've got to put his head onto his body. I'm assuming maybe so that you could paint around his neck underneath. Very sweet looking on the base. Notice the bases have notches here. Your vehicles can only move in certain directions, and it has to do with how you take the movement tool and connect it here and go up against that edge versus, just a regular trooper who can use the movement tool against any edge of their base and be fine. And then probably the coolest looking one from the core set, before we then jump into other videos for the different expansions that have come out. We've already looked at the dice pack. We've already looked at the movement tool and range ruler pack when we looked at the core set, so we won't be looking at those separately. The other one is very sweet, the ATRT. And this is crazy detailed, like right up to the point of the pistons there on the legs. I mean, super, super detailed. Also, a lot of stuff to put together. You put on both legs. You put on the pistons for each one, which is not nearly as hard as it seems if you keep track of what's the top and what's the bottom. You put the little front shield thing on. You put the antenna on the back. You stick the dude on it with his one hand that attached to the handle. His separate handle over here. his arm with his rifle pointing down. That'll make a difference when we look at the expansions. And then you have a choice of 3 different weapons to attach to the front. They don't really stay there if you just try to stick it on and swap them out, so I'd suggest picking one that's your favorite and gluing it on there. That's what I did. This is the laser cannon. There's also a flamethrower and a rotary blaster option, which we saw back when we looked at the core set in that other video. And then the feet have flat sections on it to make it easy to attach it to the base there. So incredibly detailed. It seems like in almost every case we're dealing with more detail than we would see with Imperial Assault. And for those who are wondering here, notice here, yeah, we've got some duplication, right? Because we've got 2 sets of Rebel Troopers and 2 sets of Stormtroopers, which is basically giving us 2 times the value of what one of the Stormtrooper or Rebel Trooper expansion packs will give us in terms of the minis themselves. But you'll notice, even though this is all one unit, essentially, with its specialists and whatnot, not a single one in a single unit are repeated models, right? So Imperial Assault, if you get, say, Stormtroopers, all the Stormtroopers in that particular deployment card's control all look exactly the same. They're posed exactly the same. In this case, all the ones attached to that single card are going to look different, every single one of them. So in that case, I can sort of understand some of the higher price tag, even on something as small as like the Stormtroopers or the Rebel Troopers, because you are getting multiple sculpts here. It's not just pressing out X number of copies of the exact same sculpt, dumping them into a box, and then selling it to us as an expansion. So far, I've been quite impressed by the quality of the minis. I've gone through the rules. I think it's going to be a fantastic game to play. It's fast paced in the way that it's set up. There's only 6 rounds. There's a lot of interaction back and forth. It's not like you're doing stuff and then you're waiting a while for the other side to do anything. It looks like it's going to be great fun. That said, it is much more complex. If you don't like working with small pieces and using super glue to basically put what amounts to models together, this may not be the thing for you. It is incredibly tedious. If you want to paint them, you're going to paint them, and then you're going to put them together generally, which may, or at least some of the detailed parts you probably will, which will add more time to your setup. This is not a pull it out of the box and immediately play it type of game. But I think that once you've got the time to put them all together, as I have, it's going to wind up being a pretty fun game to play. And I would imagine there will surely wind up being some websites where there will be people offering, hey, I'll put your pieces together for you and ship them to you for a modest fee. I can't imagine that not occurring if it isn't already. So, these are the minis, again, from the core set. We're going to jump now into a series of quick videos, all looking at the individual expansions released with the core set. For those who are wondering which ones those are, just to look ahead, we have Stormtroopers and Rebel Troopers that basically mirror these. We have an AT-RT that's close to mirroring this, but not exactly. We have 74Z speeder bikes, a pair of them, which almost mirror these, but not quite. And then we have 2 that are completely different. That's the T-47 Airspeeder and the AT-ST. We'll be looking at all 6 as separate videos later in the playlist after this.